CHAPTER 16 of God's Country and the Woman. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. God's Country and the Woman by James Oliver Curwood. Chapter 16. The strange effect upon Josephine of the unexpected appearance of Adare and his wife passed as quickly as it had come. When Philip looked at her again she was waving a hand and smiling. Adare's voice came booming up the trail. He saw Miriam laughing. Yet, in spite of himself, even as he returned Adare's greeting, he could not keep himself from looking at the two women with curious emotions. "This is rank mutiny," cried Adare as they came up. "I told them they must sleep until noon. I have already punished Miriam. And you, Mignonne, does Philip let you off too easily?" Adare's wife had given Philip her hand. A few hours' rest had brightened her eyes and brought colour into her face. She looked still younger, still more beautiful, and Adare was riotous with joy because of it. "Look at your mother, Josephine," he commanded in a hoarse whisper meant for all to hear. "I said the forest would do more than 1,000 doctors in Montreal." "You do look splendid, Mikawe," said Josephine, slipping an arm about her mother's waist. Adare had turned into a sudden volley of greetings to the feasting dogs, and for a moment Philip's eyes were on mother and daughter. Josephine was the taller of the two by half a head. She was more like her father. He noted that the colour had not returned fully into her cheeks, while the flush in Miriam's face had deepened. There was something forced in Josephine's laugh, a note that was unreal and make believe, as she turned to Philip. "Isn't my mother wonderful, Philip? I call her Mikawe because that means a little more than mother in Cree, something that is almost undying and spirit-like. You'll never grow old, my little mother."
"Ponce de Leon made a great mistake when he didn't search in these forests for his fountain of eternal youth," said Adare, laying a hand on Philip's shoulder. "Would you guess that it was 22 years ago, a month from to day, that she came to be mistress of Adare House? And you, ma cheri," added Adare tenderly, taking his wife by the hand, "do you remember that it was over this same trail that we took our first walk from home? We went to the chasm."
"Yes, I remember."
"And here, where we stand, the wood violets were so thick they left perfume on our boots."
"And you made me a wreath of them with the red bakneesh," said Miriam softly.
"And braided it in your hair."
"Yes." She was breathing a little more quickly. For a moment it seemed as if these two had forgotten Philip and Josephine. Their eyes had turned to each other. 22 years ago, a month from to day," repeated Josephine. It seemed as if she had spoken the words that Philip might catch their hidden meaning. Adare straightened with a sudden idea.
"On that day we shall have a great anniversary feast," he declared. "We will ask every soul, red and white, for 100 miles about, with the exception of the rogues over at Thoreau's place. What do you say, Philip?"
"Splendid!" cried Philip, catching triumphantly at this straw in the face of Josephine's plans for him. He looked straight into her eyes as he spoke. "A month from to day these forests shall ring with joy, and there shall be a reason for it, more than one." She could not misunderstand that, and Philip's heart beat joyously as Josephine turned quickly to her mother, the colour flooding to the tips of her ears. The dogs had eaten their fish and were crowding about them. For the first time Adare seemed to notice Metoosin, who stood motionless 20 paces behind them.
"Where is Jean?"
he asked. Josephine shook her head. "I haven't seen him since last night."
"I had almost forgotten what I believe he intended me to tell you," said Philip. "He has gone somewhere in the forest. He may be away all day."
Philip saw the anxious look that crept into Josephine's eyes. She looked at him closely, questioningly, yet he guessed that beyond what he had said she wanted him to remain silent. A little later, when Adare and his wife were walking ahead of them, she asked: "Where is Jean? What did he tell you last night?" Philip remembered Jean's warning. "I cannot tell you," he replied evasively. "Perhaps he has gone out to reconnoitre for game." "You are true," she breathed softly. "I guess I understand. Jean doesn't want me to know. But after I went to bed I lay awake a long time and thought of you, out in the night with that gun in your hand. I can't believe that you were there simply because of a noise, as you said. A man like you doesn't hunt for a noise with a pistol, Philip. What is the matter with your arm?" The directness of her question startled him. "Why do you ask that?" he managed to stammer. "You have flinched twice when I touched it. This arm." "A trifle," he assured her. "It should have healed by this time." She smiled straight up into his eyes. "You are too true to tell me fairy stories in a way that I must believe them, Philip. Day before yesterday your sleeves were up when you were paddling, and there was nothing wrong with this arm, this forearm, then. But I am not going to question you. You don't want me to know." In the same breath she recalled his attention to her father and mother. "I told you they were lovers. Look." As if she had been a little child, John Adare had taken his wife up in his arms and sat her high on the trunk of a fallen tree that was still held 4 or 5 feet above the ground by a crippled spruce. Philip heard him laugh. He saw the wife lean over, still clinging for safety to her husband's shoulders. "It is beautiful," he said. Josephine spoke as if she had not heard him. "I do not believe there is another man in the world quite like my father. I cannot understand how a woman could cease to love such a man as he even for a day, an hour. She couldn't forget, could she?" There was something almost plaintive in her question, as if she feared an answer. She went on quickly. "He has made her happy. She is almost 40, 39 on her last birthday. She does not look that old. She has been happy. Only happiness keeps one young. And he is 50. If it wasn't for his beard I believe he would appear 10 years younger. I have never known him without a beard. I like him that way. It makes him look beastly, and I love beasts." She ran ahead of him, and John Adare lifted his wife down from the tree when they joined them. This time Josephine took her mother's arm. At the door to Adare House she turned to the two men and said: "Mother and I have a great deal to talk over, and we are scheming not to see you again until dinner time. Little Daddy, can you go to your foxes, and please keep Philip out of mischief?" The dogs had followed her close to the door. As the men entered after Josephine and her mother, Philip paused for a moment to look at the pack. A dozen of them had already settled themselves upon their bellies in the snow. "The Grand Guard," chuckled Adare, waiting for him. "Come, Philip. I'm going to follow Mignonne's suggestion and do some work on my foxes. Jean had a splendid surprise for me when I returned, a magnificent black. This is the dull season, when I can amuse myself only by writing and experimenting. A little later, when the furs begin to come in, there will be plenty of life at Adare House." "Do you buy many furs?" asked Philip. "Yes, but not because I am in the business for money. Josephine got me into it because of her love for the forest people." He led the way into his big study, and added, as he threw off his cap and coat: "You know, in all the world no people have a harder struggle than these men, women, and little children of the trap lines. From Labrador westward to the Mackenzie it is the land of the caribou, the rabbit, and the fur bearing animals, but the land is not suitable for farming. It has been, it always will be, the country of the hunter. To the south the Ojibway may grow a little corn and wheat. To the north the Eskimo might seem to dwell in a more barren land. But not so, for he has an ever abundant supply of game from the sea, seal in winter, fish in summer. But here are only the rabbit, the caribou, and small game. The Indians would starve if they could not trade their furs for a little flour, traps, guns, and cloth to fight the cold and aid the hunter. Even then it is hard. The Indians cannot live in villages except at a post, like Adare House. Such a large number of people living in one spot could not feed themselves, and in the winter each family goes to its own allotted hunting grounds. From father to son for generations the same district has been handed down, each territory rich enough in fur to support one family, one, not two, for two would starve, and if a strange trapper poaches the fight is to the death, even in the normal year when game is plentiful and fur prime. But every 7th year there may be famine. Here in the north it is the varying hare, the rabbit, that feeds the children of the trap lines, and the marten and fox they trap. And every 7th year there comes a mysterious disease. One year there are rabbits in millions, the next there are